So we're seeing in real time how the Republicans are organizing to destroy our democracy. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So we have news from two sides of the battle to destroy American democracy, one from the top at the Supreme Court, and several from the bottom at the grassroots. Let's start by talking about the grassroots. Here's one that hits very close to home for me because, of course, it's a story from not only Michigan, but from Macomb County, where I live. Macomb County is famous for being the county identified by Stan Greenberg back in the late 1980s and early 1990s as being the home of the Reagan Democrats. And it was part of the basis for the strategy that he helped develop for Bill Clinton when he ran for president. Michigan is clearly a swing state, and even though Macomb County isn't quite the swing county that it used to be, our neighboring county, Oakland County, where I work, is certainly a swing county, one of the key swing counties in the country. That said, Macomb County, where I live, is one of the three counties that, had they not voted the way they did back in 2016, Hillary Clinton would have been president. So we're talking key areas that are helping determine the national election. Well, not surprisingly then, Republicans have targeted this county and this whole area as a key place where they want to try to undermine the vote count and the ability of people to actually vote when they show up at the polls. Now, the publication Politico has received tapes of Matthew Seyfried, a Republican National Committee employee who's the head of their election integrity unit here in Michigan. And the strategy that they're employing here is not just training poll watchers, people who kind of stand in the voting location and kind of watch the process to make sure that everything is on the up and up. But actually what they're doing is training poll workers, the actual people who check the IDs of the voters and hand them the ballots and make sure that the ballots get put into the ballot box the way they're supposed to. The target that they appear to be prioritizing is Detroit. Detroit, of course, votes overwhelmingly Democratic. And we saw a desperate effort after the 2020 election to disrupt the counting of votes in Detroit. An effort that was so disruptive and led to so much chaos and all kinds of accusations of improper activity and people being denied access to the process, that what happened there became a key talking point of those urging the legislatures to step in and appoint their own list of presidential electors. Michigan, of course, has a Republican legislature, pretty much set up as a result of gerrymandering, and it's only because of the resistance of a few state elected officials who said they really didn't want to participate in this scheme because they didn't feel like it was organized enough or didn't feel comfortable with it, that Michigan's electors went to Joe Biden, despite the fact that he won the Michigan vote by over 136,000 votes. In other words, it wasn't even particularly close. Now, this tape might be a unique story, something specific to Michigan, if we didn't see other examples of this occurring across the country. The New York Times reported about Cleta Mitchell, a Republican lawyer who's actually on the call with Donald Trump when he called Georgia's Brad Raffensperger, asking him to find enough votes to help him win the election in Georgia, despite the fact of how the voters voted. And she's going around the country, especially in key states like Pennsylvania, for example, training poll watchers to basically stand there and intimidate people who are trying to come in and vote, and especially in Democratic areas to try to depress turnout and make them feel that they aren't safe there. Apparently, Mitchell is part of a well-funded organization of people going around the country trying to intimidate Democratic voters in a desperate effort to try to keep Republicans in power again, despite the fact that they are no longer the majority. And we see the example in Florida, where in Miami-Dade County, the Proud Boys, that right-wing terrorist group, have taken over the local Republican Party and are aggressively working to try to impact the local elections there. Now, this is not some localized effort. This is a national, well-funded effort, well-organized effort aimed at destroying American democracy. I mean, how can we continue to operate in a country where one of the two parties doesn't believe in democracy at all anymore? And then, to top it all off, you have Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito delaying the counting of ballots in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, of course, is notable for the fact that you had a very close Republican primary for the U.S. Senate, still uncalled because it's too close to call, between David McCormick and Mehmet Oz. Now, Mehmet Oz of Dr. Oz TV fame is leading by a hair, less than 1,000 votes statewide. But why this is significant is McCormick appears to be the choice of the Republican establishment, while Oz is endorsed by Donald Trump. Now, you might say then, because of this Senate race, then, that the Supreme Court should take an interest in this election. But not so fast. The case at issue actually involves a local county judge. In Lehigh County, you have a judge who argued that certain ballots should not be counted because of the fact that they were undated. And apparently, the state statute says that for an absentee ballot to be counted, it needs to be filled out, dated, and signed. Now, as it turns out, a judge has already stepped in and said that those ballots should be counted because of the fact that they're not being dated really has no bearing as to whether they're genuine or not. And it's possible that people could actually satisfy the statute putting the wrong date on the ballot. And those would be counted, whereas ones that aren't dated shouldn't be counted. That just didn't make sense to the judge who ordered them to be counted. Not so fast, says right-winger Samuel Alito of the Supreme Court. He, the author of the anti-abortion decision recently leaked from the Supreme Court, and who has shown himself to be a right-wing demagogue, a true believer in the MAGA revolution, has stepped in and stopped the counting of these votes. Now, what seems especially odd about this is even in federal races, the counting of votes and how elections are held falls under the purview of the states, not the federal government. And to be sure, the race that's at issue here is a state race involving local county judgeship in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. This has nothing to do with the federal government. The only basis for the federal government to step in would be if somehow there's some right that's being violated, like people's due process rights or the right to vote being violated, or the right to equal representation being violated. Those are the type of things that the federal government might step in and say, not so fast, something needs to be checked here. But those arguments would argue for all the ballots being counted, not just the ones that were dated. Because if the federal government's interest is in trying to make sure all voters get to vote, then it should recognize the fact that these ballots should be counted. And that's indeed what the lower court judge had said. So the problem with Alito stepping in here is he's basically imposing the federal government's will upon a state election without any kind of legal basis. And this is what's disturbing to me, which is that for all the talk among Republicans about how they believe in states' rights and how the federal government is too strong, now they're cheering while the Supreme Court, under the leadership of Justices Alito and Thomas, are stretching the arms of the federal government into every corner to make sure that the MAGA Republicans get to hold on to power, again, despite what the voters may say. Well, if you want to see another video about how political America's courts have become, why don't you check out this one over here. As an attorney, I'm really disturbed by the fact that our courts have become nothing more than another arm of the legislative process. And for all their talk about being opposed to judicial activism, the Republicans are there rooting it along the whole time. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.